Hey guys, how are you? It is Kenny with RocketCityTactical.com, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the things that you need to consider before carrying a firearm. Now, when you're making the decision to carry a firearm, there are several things that you need to realize, there are several things that you need to consider, and there are several things that you need to think about. One of the things that you need to consider is that when you consciously decide that I'm going to carry a firearm, you need to be aware that what you are carrying is a holster full of consequences. Every single one of the bullets in that firearm represents a consequence, and it needs to be treated with a tremendous level of respect. The next thing that you need to realize is when you put that gun on your hip and you leave your home, every encounter is an armed encounter. You need to realize that. Now, I'm not telling you these things to deter you. I am just telling you these things so you can prepare yourself mentally, because you will have to handle encounters differently when you are armed. Being armed forces you to be an adult. And ego and pride don't mix very well with a gun. So sometimes you will simply have to change the way you would normally handle certain encounters and attempt to de-escalate situations, because you are the guy with the gun and it is now your responsibility to de-escalate a potential situation. Now, having said that, I would also like to add, the next thing that you need to consider is that you are not law enforcement officers, and it is not your job to enforce the law. You are carrying a gun for your safety, your protection, and or your family's protection. That gun is to get you home safely, and that is it. You do not have a gun to enforce the law. Let's leave the law enforcement to the law enforcement officers. The next thing that you need to research and think about are gun laws. Gun laws are going to vary from state to state, and you need to understand what those laws are, especially if you are visiting neighboring states or something like that. You need to be aware of what those gun laws are. Now, my state, Alabama, for example, we are a constitutional carry state, which means I can open carry a firearm on my hip, and I do not need a license or a permit to carry that firearm. But in the state of Alabama, you cannot transport a loaded firearm in your vehicle unless you have a concealed carry license. So let's think about that for a second. It is perfectly legal for me to walk around with that gun on my hip, but if I get into my vehicle with that loaded gun on my hip without a concealed carry permit, I am now in violation of Alabama state law. And that is why you need to be aware of the gun laws in your state and neighboring states and states that you intend to visit in the future. So, we've established that what we are carrying is a holster full of consequences that needs to be taken seriously. We have established that we are not law enforcement. It is not our job to enforce the law. And we have taken the time to do our due diligence and understand what the gun laws are for our states and surrounding states. What's next, right? Now we have to consider the possibility that we may actually have to use that firearm. Yeah. In the event that you do have to discharge your firearm to dispatch a potential threat, you need to realize and understand that more than likely you are going to get handcuffed and you will be arrested. It's just going to happen, guys. You need to be prepared for that in the event that that happens. Now, let's go back to law enforcement officers. When a law enforcement officer dispatches around, when a law enforcement officer draws his firearm and is forced to dispatch a threat, that officer is going to be under a tremendous amount of scrutiny. Every single thing about that situation is going to be picked apart, picked apart, picked apart, picked apart, right? That's just the way it is. Now, if you can imagine the level of scrutiny that that law enforcement officer is going to be under for, discharging his firearm and dispatching a threat, you can only imagine the level of scrutiny that you are going to face for doing the same thing. Now, let's say that you avoid any criminal charges and you are completely justified in your shooting. That doesn't mean that things are necessarily over, because you still have the potential for civil litigation, right? The family of the person that you shot or injured, they may decide to sue you for civil damages. That can turn into a very, very costly endeavor. Now, the reason that I'm going over this and the reason I'm telling you this is, if you are going to carry a firearm, one of the things that you may want to seriously consider is purchasing some sort of additional insurance in the event that you do have to discharge that firearm and you do have to dispatch a potential threat to save your life. You may want that additional protection, because civil litigation, even if you're not found guilty, it can still be expensive for you to pay those lawyer fees and everything else. And there are options out there. So I would look into that and I would research that. The next thing that I kind of want to talk about is training, right? Look, guys, if you're going to carry a gun, you need to train consistently with the gun that you are going to carry. If you do not train consistently with the gun that you are going to carry, you are presenting a danger to yourself and other people that are around you. Because if you are not trained for a situation where you have to discharge that firearm, there is a high potential for casualty. I mean, one of the first instincts, for an inexperienced shooter or somebody like that, you draw that firearm, you just kind of turn your head, you point that gun, and you just pull that trigger and you empty the magazine in the direction of the threat. Training is critical, okay? If you're going to carry a firearm, you need to train with that firearm, and train with that firearm. You can go to your local range, you can go to your local gun store. Somebody, somewhere can point you in the direction of a class. And that is really the last thing that I want to kind of throw out there for you to consider. Make sure that you train with a firearm. Don't go buy a gun. Go to the range one time. Put one box of 50 rounds through the gun, load it up, and put it on your hip, and think that you are going to be prepared to use that. You won't be. So please, if you are considering carrying a firearm, think about these things that I've discussed in this video. And that's just about it for me. I would like to know what you guys think, so please drop some comments, give me your thoughts, opinions. I appreciate everybody watching the video. If you guys enjoy the video, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell so you get notifications when we publish more content. Thanks a lot, guys, for taking the time to watch the video. I really appreciate it. This is Kenny with Rocket City Tactical. You guys have a great day. Say bye, Penny.
Bye.
Bye.